Hi,
Hi, Lindsay.
how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, long time no see. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Please let us know where you're joining us from. My name's Lindsay. I'm in West Virginia. Brandy's joining from her home in Virginia. Virginia. Okay. Forgot for a second. And we are going to be talking through our 2021 impact report. This is a really exciting supporter event for us. We love to be able to offer this to everyone in our Trees for the Future supporter community as a thank you to show you what impact you make possible over the last year. So we're going to be digging into our 2021 impact report here in a minute. Andrew from our monitoring and evaluation team is going to be joining us a little bit later. So please, if you haven't already, pull up that impact report that we sent you in email and shared on social media, or you can go to trees.org, and we're going to drop it in the comments for you here in a moment. Like I said, my name's Lindsay. I'm in the communications team here. And something that we were really focused on with the impact report this year was the fact that food systems can change everything. And it couldn't be more fitting because, as some of you may know, tomorrow is World Food Day. And as World Food Day is hosted by the Food and Agriculture Organization, I'm sure you can surmise that there are a lot of connections with our work. But this year, the theme really focuses on food systems and agri-systems. And so we're really excited to highlight how important food systems are. And that's everything from the food we eat to the food we grow to how we move it around the world to how it is often wasted. And so we're really excited to talk about the importance of food systems and how we at Trees for the Future and you as our supporter community are making a serious impact in our food systems and on our planet and in the lives of farmers through your support of Trees for the Future. So Brandy, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody who may not know you, and then we will jump into the impact we've made this year.
Great. Thank you, Lindsay. Hello, everyone. And yeah, thank you for taking the time to join us today. We're really excited to share this with you. My name is Brandy Lelu. I'm the programs director at Trees for the Future. I've been in this position for about 3 years now, but known Trees for many years and just have really been excited to see the work grow over the last few years. So thank you for joining us from around the world, it looks like, as I see the comments streaming in.
Yeah, I see Tanzania, I see Peru. So please let us know where you're joining us from. And also remember to drop your comments and questions. Your questions in the comments, and we have some time allotted for the end of the live stream to answer any of those questions that you may have about your impact, about your support, about our work. We've got Uganda, someone joining us from Uganda, and we've got, that's another Tanzania. A lot of Tanzania representation today. Okay, so let's get into it. Brandy, when we look at the front cover of this impact report, it's obvious. We're talking about food systems. Food systems can change everything. For those folks who may not be as intimately familiar with food systems as the Trees for the Future team and farmers around the world, tell us a little bit about food systems and their importance.
So on the cover you see one of our women farmers in Uganda. She's holding a handful of seeds and standing in front of her shaded nursery behind her. And some people might wonder how are food systems connected to trees? So, historically, food has been grown, and growing food in general is a natural process. And like all processes in nature, it's cyclical and interdependent. To grow food, we need just 4 basic elements: seed, soil, water, and sunlight. And crops, they're not only produced to get a harvest, but also then they also produce seed that can be used again the following year. And in nature, we never see just one species of growing in a square plot, even vertically, horizontally and vertically. We see diverse layers of plants and insects and animals, and they all interact in this very symbiotic relationship. But somehow along the way, we've lost this kind of natural process of growing food, and it's become very industrialized. and natural seeds and natural soil nutrients have been replaced by genetically modified seeds and chemical nutrients. And what that's really leading us into is about 4 out of 7 billion people in the world are suffering from malnutrition, but it's not all in the same way. So we see about 1 billion people that are suffering from, not having enough access to food. But then 2 million of us around the world don't have enough of the right kinds of food. And then we see another billion people that have too much of the wrong kinds of food. And so what I mean by that is that we see that 60% of all human intake of calories come from only 3 plants. And those 3 plants are wheat, corn, and rice. And when you think about getting all of or over half of your nutrients from only 3 plants, there's definitely something wrong with food systems, because there's 35,000 known edible plants. And if we're really focused on only 3 of them, then we're missing out on a lot of nutrients that could be derived from other plants. Mm-hmm. And so what the Forest Garden kind of does to change all that is it takes us back to nature. The Forest Garden is developed in a way where farmers, first of all, protect their field with a living fence. And this involves growing 3 layers of trees to protect the field from not only grazing animals, but wind erosion, to channel water back in the ground so you don't get water erosion, and to really kind of create that like microclimate and cooled space that plants can thrive. And then from there, farmers start to diversify their production, where they're growing things at all different levels. So there's some ground cover crops, there's mid-level crops, there's large trees, vines growing up the trees. So really trying to maximize both the vertical and horizontal space in that field. And then another change that the Forest Garden really focuses on is not starting over every year. So, when you're planting wheat or corn, you plow the ground, you sow the seeds, you wait for the harvest, you harvest, and then you either burn or till up the residue into the ground again. So each year you're starting over. And when you do that, the soil really depletes of nutrients. So the Forest Garden is a continuous growing cycle. And so like in nature, it builds on itself each year. The soil builds up because of organic matter that falls and gets worked into the soil. The tree roots continue to channel water back into the ground. And farmers really plant a diverse types of fruits and vegetables, some nitrogen fixing, which also helps with soil nutrients. So just kind of really recreating that natural growing system. And so
you mentioned, and we were talking about this earlier this week too, but you mentioned how few foods actually make up the typical diet. And I saw a graph a while back that was so intriguing because it showed what we should be eating as humans, nutritionally speaking, and that, fill your plate with a rainbow and all of the diversity that we want to have in our diets. And then it compared that to what the typical agricultural production is around the world. And so we know what we need to thrive as humans, but we've gotten stuck in this system of monocropping and industrialization and intensification, right? And so you and your team are doing such incredible work to help farmers understand how they can diversify their land, like you said, with, not just the number of crops that they're growing, but looking at the height and how can we grow vertically and what other things can really thrive on this land. Tell us, when we look at this impact report with Andrew, and he digs into the data with us here in a little bit, we're going to see the numbers. But Brandy, tell us about the people behind it. Tell us about the planning that goes in and the logistics that go into such incredible change happening on the ground in the countries where we work: Senegal, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, the Gambia, Chad, Mali, Central African Republic.
Yeah, so there's really about 9 months of work before tree planting occurs in the preparation, training. So farmers historically, they know how to grow food. Farmers have been growing food for centuries, and the mobilization that occurs and the training that occurs before the tree planting is really talking to farmers about how would you like to change the way you're farming and to grow more food in a more diverse manner. So, technicians work with local communities, with local governments, really explaining what the forest garden system is, what people put into it, what they get out of it. Making sure that farmers have, are working on their own land and that they have land tenure when they start the program. Because this is not planting on public land. This is not planting on land that is taken from farmers. It's farmers actually planting on their own land. So the preparation really involves mobilizing farmers and registering in the program, but then also doing several trainings. And those trainings look at how to design the forest garden and think through what you want to plant and how you want to orient your crops in your field. Looking at how to create a nursery. So each farmer creates their own nursery of about 1,000 to 2,000 trees, depending on the size of their land. And then farmers learn composting. They learn how to do integrated pest management, like creating natural pesticides, how to do permagardening. And so all those trainings happen over the course of the year, but really we look at when is the rainy season and then back all that out from there. And so that whole process takes about 9 months backed out from the rainy season. At the same time, we're working in 5 different countries, and so each country has its own rainy season. And so there's a lot of moving parts at any given time.
Yes, all those different spreadsheets and things that we have to keep track of when we're looking to see what's coming down the pipeline. And so many of you watching as supporters will often reach out to us over social media or through email and ask questions about your support. And that's what I love so much about Brandy's work and the work that she and her team are doing on the ground. There are so many moving parts, and yet we're still creating so much impact and so much change because there's just so much thought that goes behind mobilizing these projects, looking at the rainy seasons, considering logistics and procurement and all of those things that go into impact of this magnitude. Brandy, tell us a little bit more about the staff and everybody that is working to make this happen.
So just to give everybody a little bit of background who might not know, we've grown tremendously in the last 3 years, 2.5 years. At the beginning of 2019, we had about 48 staff in 4 different countries. We now have over 200. And that increased staffing capacity has largely been with technicians, but then also support staff, accountants and country directors and regional coordinators that are leading the teams. But the technicians are what our country director Harry always says, the real superheroes of the program. And the technicians are usually they have bachelor's degrees or master's degrees. They've gone to university, coming back to help their communities, or moving to rural communities that they're not even from, but really believe in changing farmers' lives. It's a very difficult job, riding motorcycles over rough terrain in the extreme heat, in the rain, working with farmers every single day, building capacity, answering questions. So technicians do this throughout the year, depending on, like I said, rain or shine. And they're really driving this work on the ground. They speak over 10 languages across all countries. Really understand the communities, the culture, issues that women face, security issues. And so with their deep knowledge of not only agriculture and seasons, but also culture and language, they're really able to make that connection, and farmers form a really educational bond and build those skills.
And I love when we're going through farmer stories, and my counterparts on the communications team, Sylvia and Maimuna and Charity, will send quotes that we're going to publish, and farmers always refer to technicians as teachers, right? The position title is technician, but when everyone's together and working toward this, shared goal, it's a teacher and a student, and I think that's really powerful. Tell us,
really,
this is a shot of Babu, a teammate in Senegal, and he shared this earlier this year. I got involved with trees because I really think that this is the path to development for people in rural Africa. The forest garden approach is the sure future of agriculture. And I think that sentiment really carries through to all of the staff and the entire team, because we all really believe in what we're doing. Randy, I want to get to challenges, and then I want to get to the data, but we were talking earlier about women in particular on staff and women farmers. Tell us a little bit about what that means to you and what you've seen in your time at Trees as far as creating equitable opportunities for women in agriculture and really elevating women in this field.
So when I started in 2019, we had only 2 women staff members, and now we have over 40. We really did a push to recruit more women into the program, and not just to check a box. Women have a very valuable role, not only as lead farmers and farmers in our farming community groups, but also as technicians, because everybody has a different frame of mind that they're approaching problems from. And we really find that women have an easier time connecting to women in the field and in the farmer groups, but also are looking at the forest garden from often a different lens, perhaps a nutrition lens, or they better understand the roles that women have in farming communities, and maybe the time that they have for developing nurseries. Yeah, like this picture shows the challenge of farming and taking care of children and balancing those multiple roles. So having female technicians working in our program is very, very important. Also, I would like to say that our technicians in the field, when I visited just a couple of years ago, and actually I just remembered this as we're speaking, one of our technicians said that it's great to have women on our staff, because they also bring just a different kind of joy and humor, and it feels more like a family because you have all the elements. So I really appreciated hearing that as well.
Yeah, we make the world go round.
You said it.
So Andrew jumped in for a second. I think he's rearing to go. Let's, Brandy, chat really quickly about the challenges that we faced this year and overcame. In this impact report, we're going to see, millions of trees planted, thousands of people helped, all of these different powerful elements of impact taking place over the last 12 months. But that wasn't without its challenges. What were some of the hiccups that we saw this year?
So COVID came on quickly, as it did everywhere. We were in the field until March 11th, and I think things started closing down on the 12th. So really had to pivot quickly and think through, what this meant to all of our teams in Africa. Particularly because we were concerned about, some countries closed down, others didn't. But regardless of whether there were shutdowns or not, we were concerned about transmission between staff and farmers and bringing COVID into rural areas and in places where the hospital capacity and access to medical care could have been very difficult. Yeah. So in the beginning, we shut down all of our offices for 3 months. Fortunately, we were still able to pay staff. Staff still continued to work from home. We set up WhatsApp groups for communication of staff. Staff called farmers. Andrew, who's going to be speaking next, set up this remote communication tracking system on Salesforce. So the technicians could call the lead farmers, check in on things, see how things were going, and then we record that, and then we could kind of collate like common responses, like we need more help with pest management. And then like get that information out easier. We also developed our training. Deputy Director Elizabeth worked with the team to develop training videos that we were able to send out, small short videos, 2 to 3 minutes, that we sent out to lead farmers via WhatsApp. And that's how Senegal developed their entire nurseries during the pandemic, which outplanted over 5 million trees. So just that quick pivot, I was really proud of staff for being able to do that. We continue, lockdowns are continuing to happen and then be lifted and happen. So we're always continuously monitoring that. And then having small group trainings if we're not able to do larger group trainings. The one other thing is that we had to get government permission to distribute seeds and biodegradable bags and materials during those lockdowns. So sometimes it was working with the government just to like distribute even having escorts out to the villages to make sure that materials were distributed, but there was no contact. So there were a lot of extra logistics. The one other thing was supply chain, and I think that most people can relate to this. So there was a supply chain deficit here and there, particularly with seeds and sometimes with equipment like quality wheelbarrows. In Kenya, we couldn't get motorcycles for almost a year. So some of those things were in short demand, and we had to come up with creative solutions.
Mm-hmm. Which you did.
Yeah.
We're going to see that here. I think we're going to bring Andrew on in just a second, but the challenges and those hurdles that were overcome over the last year and a half have just been, incredible. And the impact report shows the success of the team and the technicians and the farmers, all made possible because of our supporter community. These challenges were monumental, and because of the dedicated support that a lot of nonprofits and organizations were really worried about because of everybody's own personal challenges. And all of you watching here, you stayed with trees. You stayed with Trees for the Future and committed to the impact that we were trying to make, and we succeeded. So thank you. You were a huge integral part of that, and it couldn't have been possible without our supporter community, individuals, brand partners, institutions. So thank you. Brandy, thank you so much for setting all of that up for us. I think we'll bring Andrew on to discuss the data in depth. And Brandy, you're gonna come back on at the end? Are you gonna stick around with us while we have Andrew on, or are you gonna go behind?
No, absolutely. I'll stick around.
Okay, cool. All right, let's bring Andrew on. Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
Sorry, you got a little impatient there.
I was just, you guys were talking about data. I wanted to muscle in and join the conversation, I guess.
I also thought it was funny because we started to pivot toward women and then Andrew popped in. Hold on.
No, I'm still learning this whole streaming platform, so thanks for bearing with me.
Yeah, no, we enjoy this platform. For those of you who watch often, this is a really fun platform for us to be able to reach so many of you across YouTube and Facebook, but it's not without its little glitches. So, all right, well, Andrew, thank you for joining us. Brandy and I, we're speaking a lot about the team and everything that comes together to make this impact happen. So let's dig into the impact report. When you were first sharing all of the information that you and your team had been collecting over the year, you shared a really interesting tidbit with us, being that we are at 443 million data points collected by Trees for the Future since our founding. Tell us what that means to you as a data guy.
Yes, absolutely. So the decisions that we make as an organization all begin at data. We are a learning organization. We are a data-driven organization. We make decisions based on the data as we receive it and the analysis that we make of it. And so it is crucial that we have a steady flow of data coming in from all aspects of our work on a near constant basis, which we have been able to achieve and really ramped it up since 2013, 2014, since we started using smartphones and Android apps to collect data and interact with our farmers through our technicians in the field in near real time. So these 443 data points, for the million data points rather, they're everything from demographic information about our participants to trees that were planted in forest gardens to how many different food crops are being produced in a certain area, to food security data, to dietary diversity, everything that goes that is produced from our projects, from our programs, and also the different pivots that we have to do throughout the year, especially with COVID, as Brandy mentioned, coming up with new data points, new tracking systems that we need to create in order to not just assess what's being done and evaluate its performance, but also to manage the program directly in times of change and challenging environments, i.e., COVID.
So, what did we find with all of that being said? Let's discuss the overarching data. And I know everybody watching has spent hours poring over this impact report already, surely. But Andrew, tell us a little bit about the overall impact.
Oh, we found that we've been very busy since 1989, and in this last year, we've been extremely busy and successful in implementing our program. Since 1989, we have successfully planted over 225 million trees all around the world. This has been sequestering 4.5 million metric tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. Some of the most important work that we could be doing right now and over the next 10, 20 years. These are the direct outputs of all of these technical forest garden trainings, these 1 hour to 3 hour long trainings where we teach people how to establish tree nurseries, how to design their dream forest garden, how to outplant into them and produce food year round while working with trees to rehabilitate soil that has been degraded and farm naturally using agroforestry species trees. Over 19,000 of these trainings that were done since 1989. Working with over 300,000 people, 317,000 lives have been changed by participating in the program, and at the same time restoring close to 60,000 acres.
It's incredible. And when you say 317,000 lives changed, for those of you who keep a close look on, how many farmers we're actively working with and how many places we are working, that lives changed is extrapolated out, right? Andrew, you and your team have the number of farmers being trained, and then how many people do they support? How many dependents do they have?
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
and that's what we would refer to as direct and indirect beneficiaries of the program. So our direct beneficiaries are people who are attending these trainings and they're learning the forest garden approach and they're going to their fields and they're implementing the approach on their own land. And the indirect beneficiaries would be the people who live with them in their immediate home.
Mm-hmm. We did a story of a farmer in Senegal, and she's actually on one of the pages of the impact report, Sainabou, and her family is a very large extended family that she is, the main breadwinner for, and her forest garden supports 40 people. 40. She is using the training that she got from Trees for the Future staff to grow food and feed and support 40 people. So that the beneficiary, the reach of the forest garden is just incredible. So tell us a little bit about, well, before we get into, we want to talk about environment and people impact, but let's make sure to clarify for everybody where we're making this impact. We've worked all over the world in the last 32 years, but right now we're in 9 specific countries.
Yes, we are focusing on sub-Saharan Africa currently. Over the past 10 years specifically, we've been working in Senegal, Cameroon, Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And we are very pleased to introduce 4 additional countries into our program over this past year. Um, we're welcoming the Gambia, Mali, Chad, and the Central African Republic. So we're very pleased to open new forest garden programs in these countries.
and and many of you watching are often familiar with our standard approach, our forest garden approach with staff in those countries that Andrew nodded to: Senegal, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. And then we also have those partnerships where we work with other organizations like the International Rescue Committee, the United Nations, different groups, local groups, FAGRIB, groups in the Gambia that are community-based groups. And so there's a lot of people working toward this common goal. And so we're breaking it into environment and people for ease of digestion of the data. Let's talk about the impact on the planet.
Yes, absolutely. So when we talk about impact in this report, we are looking between the months of July of 2020 up to the end of June 2021. This allows us to kind of capture more planting seasons and gives us time to prepare these reports on an annual basis. And during this period, we're very pleased to have planted 35 million trees, almost 36 million trees during that period. It's an amazing accomplishment. It is scaled immensely over the past several years, and I'm very happy to see that we're increasing the rate at which we're planting trees, and we're very busy increasing that number again this year. We're planting these trees through our network of forest gardens, of which we have 25,708 new ones in our registry, new participants working with us to change their farming systems and their consumption systems as well. This is a network of 47,417 acres that were converted to forest garden systems in that year. So very, very happy with those, not just the numbers, but the rate at which we're growing as well.
Mm-hmm. And Andrew, Brandy touched on it a little bit in the beginning, but talking about food and looking at World Food Day coming around the corner tomorrow, and how we can improve our food systems, what is the environmental impact that, well, I guess I'm asking, what do people not always realize about our food systems and how they can negatively impact the planet?
Absolutely. Brandon touched on it a little bit about how we have been moving as people towards an industrialized food production system. It's just what the economy encourages, and it's what we have been as not just from the West or from developed nations, but it's also growing in developing nations as well, with monocropping and patenting of seeds and sales and distribution of patented seeds. It encourages the production of single crops in a planting season, and the chemical inputs to produce those crops. These systems really wear out the soil very quickly. The adding of chemical fertilizers exhausts the soil, makes it much more drier, less fortified, not as much compostable material in there. And these farming areas lay barren for the vast majority of the year. You plant with the rains and you harvest when the crops are mature. And cover crops are typically not planted afterwards. And so you have 8 months of the year where the land is exposed to harsh sun and wind and experiences a great deal of erosion. This is at opposite ends of the scale when you look at the forest garden approach and how farming is done in an agroforestry system, where living fences are planted around the field, and trees are planted interspersed with crops. We also have opportunities for farmers in most areas to access water which allows the production of fruits and vegetables year round, which is excellent news for the market activities, going to market every other week or every week to sell the products of the forest garden. But it's great for families at home who can eat a diverse range of foods and diversify their dietary consumption. And it's also great for the environment. The land is no longer laying fallow for 8 months out of the year. It has roots that are going down into the soil, guiding water back into those aquifers, and the creation of what we like to call like little microclimates, where the air just completely feels different as you walk into a forest garden. The air just is cooler. You can feel the moisture in the air. It's a completely different world than you would be maybe 50 feet west into a traditional agricultural system.
Yeah. And for that reason, talking about reforestation and ecosystem restoration, that's why, we stand firm with food systems change everything, because when we see all of this degradation taking place and can tie it back to agriculture, the best solution moving forward is to improve the agricultural system, or get back to what really, it originated as, like you and Brandy say, farmers know how to farm. It's the system that's gotten a little out of whack, right? So with these impact numbers that we're seeing in the impact report as it relates to environment, it's not just planting trees, it's making sure to change the behavior and make sure that these trees are around for the long haul, that the soil is repaired, that the individuals who are living on that land are invested in the success of the land. So it's really a long-term solution to climate change and environmental degradation.
Absolutely.
So I know we love to talk. I mean, we just get into it too much and then we start running out of time. Andrew, let's talk about impact on people. Let's talk about nutrition, dietary diversity, and income.
Yes, absolutely. And I kind of touched on this a little bit when talking about the environmental impacts of the forest garden approach. But there is an equal, if not greater, impact on the people who are either practicing the forest garden approach directly or are living with somebody who is, and are consuming products from the land that's being farmed. Just as much as the actual forest garden themselves. We do a number of surveys throughout the year with our forest garden programs. And one of them looks specifically at food security and dietary diversity. We ask a number of questions from surveys that were developed by USAID and are recognized by the UN and several other international organizations. We ask lots of questions about food access. And these are summed up into an index score and categories, and we can see just how food secure or insecure a household is. And this is one of the toughest parts of my job is to analyze the incoming practitioner households and to assess what food security means to them. We do these at a time when hunger is at its highest in the year, which is just before harvesting, and the previous food stores are starting to run dry or have not already run dry, and money has yet to come in. So hunger is at its highest, and this is when we monitor food security. And unfortunately, we do see a very high prevalence of insecurity at our baseline study for our new practitioners who have yet to implement the forest garden approach. We see that 56% of incoming practitioners are severely food insecure. Now, what does that mean to be severely food insecure? This means that people in the house are sleeping hungry. Mm-hmm. It means that they are skipping meals, or it means that they have gone 24 hours in some cases without eating anything because they just don't have any access to food. It's very troubling, and it's a reality for 56% of our participants. And that's an average too. Some communities it's higher, some it's lower, but it's just too high, too darn high. But very happy to say that after just 1 year, that number drops significantly, and it has dropped to as low as 8% by year 3. And it is a downward trend, and we expect to see year 4 data confirm that that is going to continue dropping. And we, as an organization, are also working to identify what is preventing those 8%ers from continuing to improve that. But it's already just a very, very encouraging impact observation.
As we try to wrap up, I do want to add one more question. With how many years you've been doing this, what were some of the impact numbers or findings that stood out to you for this 2021 report?
Absolutely. So I've been doing monitoring and evaluation for trees for several years now, and I'm very happy to see everything is kind of going in the same trajectory as we would expect and that we would hope, and things are going as one would hope so. What is really encouraging to see that is encouraging, but what's also encouraging to see is that the rate at which we're growing is just really remarkable. We saw an almost 300% increase in the number of forest garden practitioners this past year, 295%. That is a huge increase. Our training program is expanding like very, very quickly right now. We did 9,288 trainings just in that past impact report period from July to June. 9,288. That is 37,152 hours of teaching about the forest garden approach. And if you don't know how much that is, that is 4 entire years from sun up to sundown to sun up of teaching. All crammed into one calendar year. It's really fantastic.
Yeah.
And we just could not have done it without the technicians in our organization and our field staff, who I'm really happy to see so many people on this call are representatives of our organization, and as well as the people who are tuning in and who are our supporters. We're so thankful to have their support and their presence today as well.
Yeah, absolutely. We are so happy to be able to provide this report, not just to, show the impact and show this proof that this works and it's a reliable way forward for so many of the challenges that we see in the world: hunger, poverty, climate change. But also in that, we are so excited to be able to give this report to each and every one of you to show you what impact you are making as a Trees for the Future supporter, as a member of our community, whether that's, sharing social media posts or telling a friend about Trees for the Future. You all are part of this impact, and we cannot thank you enough. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for being a part of it. Andrew, thank you for sharing and digging into it with us. We have we're going to run a little over time, but we're going to show a video from our late founder, Dave Deppner, and then Brandy's going to come on to tell us a little bit about goals for the future. And I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions.
Great. Thanks, Lindsay, and thank you.
Grace and I have 9 children, and we have 17 grandchildren. These children are going to grow up, as children all over the world are doing, in a much, much different world. We could be planting more than 500 million trees a year. It's possible. There are that many people out there waiting for something. All it takes is getting the word around and creating some confidence that it can be done. I learned a long time ago in this business not to ever use the word never, because as soon as you say never, some guy's going to come down off the mountainside and say, guess what I just did? It's amazing what one seed can grow.
We're trying, but we're trying no more. It's cold on the floor, it's cold on the floor. This house has never been the same as before. It's never felt warm, never felt warm. There's something moving through the windows and walls. I've seen it before, seen it before. You left me living with a lingering soul. How little you know, how little you know.
because I get choked up every time. Okay, so thank you, Andrew, for coming back on. I think we're waiting for Brandy to come back on too. Perfect. Hi, Brandy.
Hi.
I know we're a little over time already, but we want to chat really quickly about our plans for the future, and living up to those words of Dave, never saying never. What are we hoping to accomplish? What will we accomplish by 2030?
I had the great pleasure of knowing Dave and working with him. He was extremely professional. He also said he plants trees to keep from cursing the night sky. So I think that sometimes it can feel very, he had a lot of good phrases, but it takes us all working together and really working toward something good rather than cursing what is existing. So to talk about our goals for the future, we have a grand challenge to plant 1 million trees over the next, by 2030. So in the next 9 years, actually 8 years now, with 250,000 farmers. This type of scaling requires, we've already begun to scale over the last 2 years, but this kind of scaling requires extreme creativity, ingenuity, listening and working together with farmers and staff, finding the best methods and the most effective ways to train, to disseminate information, to work with farmers, to have access to seed. Some of the initiatives we're taking in order to do that is developing seed banks. So we are now buying seeds back from farmers who have been in the program for a number of years, and then able to reuse those seeds for planting with new farmers. We also have a new initiative called Plant It Forward. This was conceived by one of our regional coordinator in Senegal, Fatimata. She had the idea of, farmers graduate from our program and then they're like, okay, we have all this knowledge, now what? And so we've engaged with lead farmers from the graduate programs that are now training 20 neighbors to develop forest gardens. And so we call that the Plant It Forward program. It's been extremely successful in that farmer to farmer knowledge exchange. And so we see that program growing in the future and also helping us plant more trees, because as projects graduate, there's more of an opportunity for that. We're planting in 3 major kind of landscape level zones, and our goal is really to cover those landscapes. One is the Great Green Wall, which is in an enormous area. It stretches completely across the Sahel. So when we, that requires numerous partners planting in all different formats or methodologies. The Lake Victoria watershed. So in Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, all the land area that flows into to Lake Victoria, that's another zone. And then the last one is buffers to the large national parks in Tanzania, where there's wildlife that is on reserves but not fenced reserves. Tanzania is the only country that doesn't have fenced reserves. So farmers live in those same areas within 50 to 60 miles, and the forest gardens create kind of a buffer between that agriculture and wildlife reserve. So those are the 3 major kind of landscape areas we're working on to plant with farmers. But we're so proud to have really amazing partners through the African Union Great Green Wall Initiative, Futures Agribusiness, that's working with us in Chad and Cameroon on sustainable cocoa and sustainable coffee, IRC, who is working with us in really in a conflict zone, severe conflict zone, where we're also addressing, how do people have a sustainable livelihood within that conflict zone. Who else am I forgetting? OSU, Ohio State University. We've had for a number of years partnership with them, looking at research and and how can we get more data collection around forest gardens. I don't want to forget anybody, Lindsay.
Scouts.
And so then we also have a number of local partners in country. One is the Kenya Scouts. So Kenya has a plan 2030 to increase tree cover across every county to 10% by 2030. And as part of that, they've tasked the Scouts with planting 1 million trees in each county. So to date, we've planted with the Scouts 4 million of those 54 million trees. So that is a really exciting partnership. And then in Tanzania, we have 2 exciting partnerships. One's with the Bureau of Prisons, where we are working with the prisons to build the capacity of people to develop nurseries and create forest gardens as a side environment as part of the prison area. And then Clinton Development Initiative, working with farmers who have been traditionally growing soybean and to diversify their production. And so there's just a number of really, really exciting partnerships that we have in place to help expand that tree growing. But the one thing that I saw in the chats while I was on my break, or while Andrew was speaking, is that we have a number of people on that have forest garden certifications. And so the Forest Garden Training Center is an opportunity for anyone to become certified in forest gardens and in the development of forest gardens and learn how to create them with communities, create them with regions they're working with all around the world, and then pledge those trees as part of what we're doing. So I just there's really a lot of exciting opportunities. I know that's going to be expanding in the future, that, people's involvement in as forest garden trainers.
Yeah,
so,
I saw Warren. I think Warren, South Africa, right? And he's a very active, certified member of that community. So it's definitely a growing community. Elizabeth and Olivier work tirelessly on that to make sure that people have access to these training materials so they can make this happen in their own communities, wherever that may be. I saw a question about the UK. That applies to you too, right? You can use these training materials to guide your programming throughout across the world. So I know we are way over time. So I think we have time for 1 or 2 questions. I think Kendall's going to pull them up for us here, and then we'll hop off after this. Okay, so Patrick asked earlier, Andrew, while you were talking about nutrition, he said, with a more nutritious variety of crops, from a public health point of view, have you tracked any improvements in disease stats? Same for impact on sanitation, water.
That's a really good question. Health and medical conditions and disease is not part of our monitoring strategy at this time, but it is something that we could consider in the future. That is an interesting question and one that we might want to look into, especially transitioning as a world into a post-COVID society.
Mm-hmm. And I think anecdotally, we often hear about access to healthcare because of the increase in income, right? And so there are these anecdotal elements, but Andrew, I think that's really an interesting thing to consider for sure.
We do, and the vast number, like 99%, over 99% of the people who we work with are get their main income from farming. They are subsistence farmers. And so when you transition to a forest garden where you're able to take things to market every single week instead of once a year, you're able to, as one of my farming friends put it, have more money in your pocket, and it really changes things. You can go to the doctor, you can afford prescriptions, and alongside all of the other things you have to pay for, is tuition and school clothes and everything that a family needs to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that, Andrew. And I think we have one more question coming on biodiversity, I believe. Yodo, what are the environmental impacts of agroforestry practices in restoring biodiversity, ecosystems, and landscape restoration in general, and in relation to forest garden programming?
I'm happy to take that if you or Andrew, you can expand on it in a minute. So the forest gardens are diverse in themselves, in terms of growing different tree crops and vegetable crops. But the way that it really helps the outside environment is that it decreases pressure on natural forests. So, people are still primarily using fuel wood as a source of cooking fuel. And so forests are getting depleted from being that need for fuel wood, and chopping down the trees for that. But also, particularly because I see that Yodo is in Cameroon. Cameroon also has some of the most biodiverse places in the world, with hundreds and thousands of unique species. And there's a large percentage of the population that relies on forests for food, for nuts, for spices, and so those are harvested from the forest. And in really diverse areas, it's also possible to grow those within the forest garden. So it reduces that pressure on the forest, not only for fuel wood, but also for those products that people go to mine or harvest from the forest.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Thank you, Brandy. And Warren just threw one more at us, I think. So I think we're going to, if everybody has a minute, we're going to take one more question. Veggies are quick, fruit trees take time and do more good to the soil. How do you encourage hungry people to put time and resources and effort into trees?
And I really want to pass this one to Brandy, because I think this touches on the loads of moving parts in implementing a forest garden program.
Right. Yeah, so when we think about the forest garden, we think about it in a 4-year period. And so farmers need produce that they can eat and sell immediately, but because nobody can wait 4 years to get an income. So we look at things that can be grown easily and sold the first year, things that can be consumed the first couple of years, and then things on a longer term basis. So when you think about the forest garden in terms of fruit trees, papaya and passion fruit can produce within that first year. So those are planted alongside the longer term guava and citrus and mango and avocado trees, for example. So because those will fruit in 3 to 4 years, by the time those fruit, the papaya trees will need to be replanted or can be planted, in another area of the garden, because they have a life cycle of about 3 to 4 years. So it's really like thinking, knowing, and that's where our technicians come in too, knowing the life cycle of those trees, knowing what fruits when, but it's not only the timing, it's not only the year, 2 year, 3 year cycle, it's also the time of year. So we really try to time things so that farmers have something to eat, sell, or trade every month of the year. So looking at when different fruit trees fruit, when not only in terms of the timing for them to mature, but also in terms of when they're ready during the harvest cycle.
Mm-hmm. And I also think, to Warren's question, there's the element that you both see, I think, regularly, where farmers, being risk averse and having a lot on the line, aren't sure they're going to, sometimes there's a farmer who will not join the program, right? And they see a neighbor who joined the program and their forest garden kind of become established very quickly. What kind of shift do you see in communities when they see the forest garden approach taking root and working?
Yeah, there are a lot of farmers that want to join the program after seeing the success of their neighbors. There's also farmers that are reluctant in the beginning, and they'll plant their live fence, but within the field it's all corn. So it's just different people have different risk levels, and also sometimes it depends on how much other land a farmer might have. They might have another plot of land where they plant corn, and they just try the forest garden on the worst piece of land that they have, which is what kind of happened in Tabora, Tanzania. The land was completely depleted from growing tobacco, and farmers chose the worst land they had for the forest gardens, but it actually ended up working really, really well on that land. So sometimes it's just that visual and seeing what kind of success your neighbor has. And I think that's kind of across the board, across the world with everything, right? There's early adopters of everything.
I agree. I'm so happy that we do have a Plant It Forward program where we're working with communities members who were not in the original program, but still were interested after seeing the results. And accessing the trained practitioners who have the skills then become teachers and teaching others how to use it. It's very interesting to go visit a forest garden and walk around and see all the trees, and then look at the neighboring field and start to notice differences from traditional agriculture. Like, wait, this person has alley crops of Lucina, of an agroforestry species, but they're not part of the program. It's just from their observation of their neighbors, seeing that they get interest, they're interacting with the farmer, getting seeds from the farmer, getting seedlings, and implementing it on their own just because of their own interest after seeing it. Yeah. It's great.
Incredible. I know we are so over time. I am going to call it there. This was an incredible conversation. Thank you both so much for taking the time to talk through the impact report today. And once again, to all of you watching, this impact is made possible because of donor support. We could not do these amazing programs without you, and we cannot make it to 1 billion trees by 2030 without you. So we hope that you've enjoyed the impact report. We hope that you see your part in it and take pride in what you've helped Trees for the Future and Trees staff and Forest Garden farmers accomplish in the last year and since 1989 when we were founded. Thank you so much. Please, if we didn't get to any questions that you asked, send it to us over social or email. Be sure to subscribe to our newsletter. Be sure to follow us on all social media channels, and we'll give you a taste of your impact on a daily basis. Thank you all so much. Andrew, Brandy, have a great day. It's always a blast.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, everyone.